The standard deduction significantly changed this year, and it's going to impact about 90% of taxpayers. I'm a tax attorney and tax professor, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to walk you through some of these changes so you're ready for tax season. The first thing is to define what a standard deduction is, or to explain it. So the standard deduction is the amount of income that is going to be automatically shielded from being taxed, assuming you do not itemize. So for example, if your income were $30,000 and you have a standard deduction of, say, $25,000, you'd only have $5,000 that will be taxable income. The other $25,000 up to the standard deduction is shielded against being taxed. So it's a big deal. Now, let's go ahead and look at the first thing, which is the changes for the 2025 and 2026 tax years. Now, what you're looking at here is the different amounts for the standard deduction based on your filing status, which is all the way to your left, then your 2025 amount for your standard deduction. So that's what you'll be using when you file in 2026 in the upcoming tax season. And then you have the amount that is the 2026 standard deduction, which is what you will use if you file in 2027. So the standard deduction not only increased this year, but it also has been indexed to inflation, so it's going to continue to increase every year. Now let's look at the filing statuses. If you're single, then in the upcoming tax season for 2025, tax season 2025, you get $15,750. Which means if your income is below $15,750, you do not have to file a return. You don't pay any taxes. However, even though you may not have to file a return, you should, because if your employer's been withholding taxes, you want to make sure you get that refund back. Okay? But the standard deduction would shield the first $15,750 of income from being taxed. Then you have married filing jointly. We're doubling it up at $31,500. Head of household, $23,625. Surviving spouse, $31,500. And married filing separately, $15,750. If you shift over to 2026, you can see that it increased because they're indexed with inflation. And we already have our 2026 amounts, which will be used when you file in 2027. Now, if you're not familiar with the different filing statuses, I will go ahead and I'll do a video on those for you. So make sure you're subscribing to this channel, not only for that, but for other topics. A lot of the new tax code changes are also being addressed in here. And then some of the things that are just basic that, hey, maybe you just never learned it, or this is a first time filer or whatever. I try to explain some of those concepts to you as well. All right, well, that's going to be the first thing. So we're looking at the different amounts in 2025. That's the amount that you're going to be using. But the changes didn't just relate to the filing amount. There are also a new type of deduction for those that are 65 or older, right? They get a new senior deduction, and you were able to take this whether you itemize or whether you take the standard deduction. Now, I'm only talking about standard deduction here, but what would happen when you do have a standard deduction or itemizing? Everybody could claim a standard deduction if they want. However, if you have certain expenses that can be itemized, like maybe you have home interest on your mortgage interest, maybe you're paying a lot in state taxes, either income or sales taxes, you have high medical costs, those things may add up enough to where you're going to want to go ahead and itemize, and you would only want to itemize if the amount of your itemized deductions exceeds the amount of your standard deduction. So if our itemized deductions were $15,000 and we're single, we say, nope, we're taking the standard deduction because it's $15,750. However, if our itemized deductions were $17,000, we say, yeah, absolutely. Let's not take the standard deduction. Let's itemize and take that. So let's go ahead and look at the additional standard deductions that you can also get, which includes the new one for 65 and older. Plus, there are others that are existing, the original existing standard deduction for age, and also if you're sight impaired. So let's take a look at a table that will help us explain that. So here are some additional standard deductions that you can take in the 2025 tax season. So when you're filing in 2026, I did not put the amounts up there for 2026, which would happen when you file for 2027. But this will give you an idea of some of the different deductions that you can take, even though you're doing the standard deduction. So I added the 2025 filing in 2026. Those are amounts, or what we just talked about, the 15,750, all the way down to the married filing jointly of 31,500. Then what you have directly to the right of it, and I put this in its own little color, is the new senior bonus for those that are going to be 65 or older. So this applies for the next 3 or 4 years, and what you're looking at is this gives you an additional $6,000 if you're single. If you're married and both of you are meeting the requirement of being 65 or older, then it's up to $12,000. So this is an addition to your 15,750 or 31,500. You're going to get this amount. Okay, so now we're adding up pretty quick. And this additional bonus, like I said, whether you're taking the standard deduction or you're itemizing, you're going to be able to take this one. So there is one thing that you need to be aware of, though, is that it does phase out based on your income. So you can see the phase out is going to be $75,000 up to $150,000. Okay, so that's where it starts to phase out. I have a full video that walks you through the process of the new senior bonus. So you can take a look at that video. I'll link it in the comments so you can access that if this applies to you. Another one is if you're 65 or older, then what you're looking at is you get an additional $2,000. Okay, for if you're single or if you're married filing jointly, you get $1,600. Now that $1,600 is for each spouse that qualifies. So if both of you are 65 or older, you're both getting $1,600, so $3,200 for the age, and you're both getting, assuming that you meet the AGI requirements, up to $12,000. You both get $6,000 up to a total of $12,000 for the new senior bonus. So you're getting quite a bit of money on this that helps shield you in addition to your normal standard deduction. And then if you're sight impaired, what you get is an additional $2,000 or $1,600 per spouse that qualifies. And then you would add that to your other standard deductions on here. So these things can add up pretty quick for you. These are very helpful in terms of the shielding you from taxes. It can save you quite a bit of money when you file your taxes. Now, like I said, these are new. Some of these are new, and these changes are going to impact most taxpayers. So make sure that you're understanding these and taking advantage of your standard deductions. There is an additional bonus that is happening after the 2025 year. You're now going to be able to do charitable donations as well. And even if you're taking the standard deduction, you're going to be able to take an additional $1,000 deduction. If you're single, $2,000 if you're married filing jointly. But again, I have another video that addresses that topic. So go ahead and subscribe to my channel and get access to all this additional information and future tax updates.